Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining. My name is Wayne Conger. I'm Hut's founder and CEO. I'm excited today to go over another one of our Hut's How We Do It series videos. And today we're going to be going over how we do it forever homes. So we've gone through lots of different categories and use cases of kind of housing scenarios in these how we do it videos, everything from ADUs to multi-generational housing to rental properties, investment properties, what else? Hybrid homes. And today we're kind of getting to what I would consider like one of the more standard uses, the house that you've sort of saved up for or you've traded up to, and this is the house you intend to live in for the indefinite future. And so that's a whole category of client that we work with, where this is really their family home or their primary home or their the one and only place that they call home. And so for us, a forever home doesn't necessarily have to mean the place you're going to live in until you die, but it's the place where you have no real intention to trade at any point. You might down the line, circumstances change, people's lives change, but your goal is that you're going to stay there for the foreseeable future. And why that matters is really because of financing. And when we look at rental properties or we look at investment properties, one of the things that we are considering at all times is what is the cost of construction versus the after construction value. And there's some best practices on what that ratio should be. We often look at a kind of 3 to 4 or 75% rule of thumb, that you should be spending about 75% all in on the cost of construction for this property to have an after construction value that is about $1. So every 75 cents that you spend is worth $1 in after construction value. That trying to adhere to that ratio makes it more likely that you're going to create certainly an equity positive project, but also a cash flow positive project when you're thinking about the property as an asset. Now, in the primary home market, that math skews a little bit. I still like that math. I think it's really sound and financially responsible. It's also one of the big benefits of doing what we're asking our clients to do when they work with Hut's, that they are essentially turning themselves into a land developer. And as a land developer, you're not paying the premium for that a developer is marking up their project for, because you as the land developer are taking on some of the risk. You are buying land, you're improving that land, you're designing a house for it, you're putting together a build team, you're securing financing, you're operating as the land developer. And yes, you're doing it with Hut's help, and we're sort of guiding you through every step of the way, but you're doing the same tasks that a developer would do, and you should be rewarded in the way that developers are rewarded, which is through stored equity in the project, that the 75 cents that you put at risk is equal $1 on the backside, that the $750,000 that you put at risk is worth $1 million on the backside, that you're immediately equity positive. Now, with a primary home, because your intention is not to flip the property or start renting it or see it as an asset right away, it's really home, math starts to change a little bit with a primary home, that because you plan on staying there for 7, 10, 20, 40 years, appreciation starts to become part of the equation. That yes, it'd be great if the house is an asset that you've created is immediately equity positive, but it maybe doesn't need as much of a margin there. You maybe don't need 25% right off the bat to make this all work. You could start thinking about this a little bit differently, that you're going to be able to have some time to let appreciation do its job. And then you're looking at, am I designing a house that works for me over that time period and will appreciate with some space? One of the interesting things about working in home design and home construction is that I'm often surrounded by construction, which is the case today. So again, it may be that you get a little bit closer to the after construction value with the amount that you spend, that you may spend $1 million, or maybe use smaller math, spend $500,000 on a house that is only worth $525,000 or $550,000 after construction, and you're only netting 5 or 10% equity in the project. But because you have no intent to transact and sell it right away, and you're hoping to live there for the next 10 years, and you created a very desirable property with that should appreciate faster than surrounding properties, maybe upwards of 8-10% per year. You get 100% appreciation over 10 years. So this $500,000 property is worth $1 million later, and maybe spend a little bit more upfront because you're going to be using it during that time. So it has all of the utility value that it's the house you really want. So some of the math on primary homes gets a little less conservative, and we do take in thoughts on like what really, really matters to you for this to be your one and only place, your sanctuary, your location where all of the things that are happening at home occur. And that's even more important when we think about the number of clients that come to us where working from home or all of their hobbies or all of their leisure time is also spent at home, that we're thinking about this primary home, as office, as vacation, as all of these different pieces. And then again, that starts to play into how we think about how to spend on it. That if you're not renting a separate office space, then this becomes that. So how much should you invest in your home as your office? If you're planning on really spending more of your leisure time here as well, how do we make sure that your primary home is amenitized appropriately? And what you would have maybe spent on vacations over the next 10 years, maybe you're spending half of that within the house. So primary homes have all of that thinking baked into it. Let's go through three categories or kind of three flavors of primary homes that we tend to be working on at the moment. One is, call them like renovations and plus addition hybrids, where there's an existing structure, somebody has a lot of stored equity in the house, but it's just not working anymore, and it's really not like a dream house. It's not their forever home. How are we going to take this place? But maybe there's not enough cash there, enough kind of resource there to say, I'm going to sell that existing place that isn't working for me, and I'm going to buy a new place that does, or build a new place that does. They're kind of stuck with that existing property, either because they bought it so well, the cost was so reasonable, their existing interest rate is so reasonable, there's enough stored equity there that we can utilize existing property to help finance an addition. And it just makes sense to kind of stay where they are and then expand the footprint. So we'll go over two projects that look like that. We'll go over a couple that are really live-work scenarios, and they fall into that thinking that I was describing, where as much as we're thinking about the house, we're also thinking about a unique like working scenario, and that plays into both the design and the economics of the house. And the last is what I would call kind of dream houses. It's places that somebody's been thinking through this for a while. They're kind of finally ready to pull the trigger on really, truly their kind of traditional notion of a forever home. And I think what's interesting about these houses is it tends to be that there is no existing house out there that this sort of client has found that works for them. So they know they need to design and build it themselves. But the traditional methods for how to do that, going to, say, a wholly custom architect or somebody that's starting from a blank page, just feels too risky. That the design that architect might be working on likely doesn't know very much about what it really costs, and they don't have infinite resources. So that's just kind of a non-starter getting into something where they have no idea what the costs are. They might really love the design output, but the predictability in the project doesn't work. So we'll go over renovation, addition hybrids. We'll go over live work kind of houses and these sort of like traditional dream houses. So let's start first with this project called the Elevated Extension. This is a project that is in the kind of northern edge of Westchester County in New York State. And for those of you who know New York area, or have heard of Westchester County, it's very, very expensive. Cost of construction is very expensive. Existing homes are very expensive. And our client had moved from the West Coast to Westchester, bought a small 800 square foot bungalow from the 60s, had done a little bit of kind of spruce up on it, but really wasn't working for her and her daughters. But the prospect of selling this house and then buying a new house just didn't make any sense. Anything around there anything new construction cost 3-4 times per square foot than what she bought the existing house for. Her lot was fantastic because it was from 60, 70 years ago and hadn't been subdivided and parceled out. So had a lot more land than you would find in new construction, and just made sense to kind of work from the existing bungalow. And so what you're seeing here is two things are going on. On the right side was an existing little 2-bedroom, 1-bath bungalow that we retained the foundation, We punched some new holes in for better window patterning. We tore off the roof and changed the roof line, but a lot of the existing structure remained. And so that side, which I'd call, okay, now I can draw on this. That's fun. This side, that's really a renovation. Then we created our sort of new entryway and a new sequence to enter into the house, which became sort of a connector to an addition, which is this side. So now we're able to merge the materiality and the finish quality between these two sides of the house, make it feel like one coherent place that had always been there. But the costs of construction are different. We've got really renovation costs, no foundations, no new structure, very limited new glass, limited changes in plumbing or electrical routing. It's essentially a new roof and a couple of new windows. So relatively low cost of construction, really just better space planning. And then here we're building a new 700 square foot addition that is built at the cost that you would expect from a new house in that area. It's around $450 a square foot. But the result is a new 1,500, 1,600 square foot house that's essentially being built at the cost of like a new 800 square foot house. So a lot of benefit here, and on a lot that just simply doesn't exist anymore. There would be no way for this client to be able to buy a new 3-acre lot on a small swimmable lake in Westchester County today. That would only happen through already owning this sort of rundown cabin or bungalow that was already on site. So I'll kind of just come down here to the floor plan. Again, you can see this side where this bathroom is and this master bath. This previously was a small bathroom, 2 bedrooms, and the kitchen. So we're keeping all the water in place. We're not rerouting a bunch of plumbing. And then we're adding this new left side space for a new large kitchen and a new living room, something that just really didn't exist before in this house. So ostensibly a new 1,600 square foot house, very efficiently delivered because we're taking advantage of the existing structure that was there. Similar playbook in our project in Ketchum, which is in Sun Valley. Similar market conditions, one of the most expensive places to build in the country. Very prohibitive to buy a raw lot if you can find one at all. Very, very prohibitive to build from the ground up, both cost-wise and timing. The permitting has an enormous amount of red tape. And so traditional developers in this area, there's a reason they rarely work on houses that are not $10 million because there's lots of time costs, there's lots of going in costs. The basis for starting the project is just extremely high. And for them to make it work, if they're going to build a house and then sell it, they have to put a lot at risk and get a lot of margin on the back. But if this is your primary home, you're not thinking that way. And if you don't have $10 million and you have a small fraction of that, you need to think creatively around how to get the space that you require and create a forever home out of the materials that you have. And so the materials that our client had here was similarly a 1960s era kit house, maybe not a Sears home, but similar kind of later idea, but essentially a small kit home that had been placed down on what is now a very primo lot in Sun Valley. But her and her husband and their 2 rapidly approaching teenage age boys, this little bungalow just was not working anymore and wouldn't work in the future. So here what you see is on the left side, there was a existing bungalow that essentially followed the same footprint that you see, but with kind of strange little windows and a shallower roof that made the place sort of feel low and dark. Didn't make it possible to see the kind of grand view and the mountains of Idaho that make Sun Valley so special. And on the other side, a very tight 1-car garage. And so we said, great, let's think about this as a renovation and an addition. We're going to create a space that feels entirely new, but we're going to retain as much of the foundation, we're going to retain as much of the footprint, and we're going to permit this as a renovation, which is also a much more accelerated and easier to get approved permitting approach here and in many places. So we basically took those existing elements, this is great to be able to draw over. We took those existing elements with the garage and the old bungalow and said, okay, we're now going to take that old bungalow and bring the walls up, bring the roof up, We're going to let in a bunch of light with new windows without changing too much of the structure. And we're going to rejigger the program in here so that less of the house is forced to be in here, that kids' bedrooms can be on this side, kitchen and dining can be on this side, but some of the other spaces can move over to what started as a garage and turned into essentially a two-story addition where the primary suite is up top. It operates as like a bit of a tree house, getting a view towards the mountains, and then have this connector that kind of bridges what were two disparate spaces and knits them together into one space. Similar to the elevated extension project, this Ketchum Modern project. Let's get rid of all these guys. We kept the septic in place. We kept all the systems in place. Didn't touch any of that. Stayed within the same exact footprint. But shrunk down the bedroom spaces or reduced the number of bedrooms that were in the original bungalow because we moved the primary suite into the garage space, had his kids' bathroom, have the little game room or den, formal living room and kitchen, and then through a new entryway that in Sun Valleys or less ski storage and being able to peel everything off before you get into the house, and then full laundry room downstairs, and then up the steps to a new primary suite with walk-in closet, views over the mountains, and a great 4-piece bath. And we were able to retain a garage big enough for an SUV. So it's not a grand house here. It's pretty efficient. It's thoughtful in its space planning. It utilizes a lot of the ingredients that were already there. And this project felt a little bit like, when you haven't gone food shopping for a little bit, you go to the refrigerator late at night and there's kind of like a strange collection of things. There's like a pickle and some cheese and something else. And you get very creative around how to incorporate these ingredients into something that feels sort of gourmet. And that's a lot of what happened here in Ketchum. We had kind of a busted old garage that was being used as a gym, kind of. We had cars sitting outside and getting snowed on, which is a problem. We had a shed that was being used as ski storage. We kind of took all of those things and said, what can we hold on to here? What can we utilize? And then combined it into this really great primary home. There we go. And the house is very much in progress. It's a little out of date, but the shell is complete on this house. And sort of good reminder to update this, but this is a home that will be complete by midsummer or so. We've got maybe another 3 months of construction. Okay. So those are our kind of renovation addition hybrid houses. A lot of you probably live in homes that look a little bit like this, where you're looking around at your house and saying, what am I going to do with this place? We bought this at a time or refinanced at a time where the interest rates are so great on it. We don't want to give it up. We don't necessarily want to sell it, but it's hard to imagine how we would move into a new place or build a new place. So what do we do with this existing house? We're quite good at figuring out how to utilize what's there and then add on to it in a way that's cost efficient and space aware and works within the financing conditions of today. Okay. The next is a collection of like live work homes. And I think that a lot of people's primary homes look a little bit like this today. They're their house, they're their office, they're their studio, they're their hobby space. Everything's happening in one spot. And these houses exemplify that. And it also represents a bit of a consolidation that, let's say you have in both of these cases, our clients they're renting homes or they're renting apartments. So they had their 2 and 3 bedroom rentals that cost some thousands of dollars a month, say $3,000 or $4,000. And then they were also renting separate studio spaces or office spaces, an additional few $1,000s a month. So housing costs that are getting close to $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a month. And they were looking at it and saying, can we just combine all of this, pay half of that, and have everything in one space? And that's kind of exactly what we did with these homes. So Stonewall House is in the Western Catskills near Livingston Manor. Our clients live in Queens and Long Island City in New York. They keep office space and they're moving here and they're consolidating everything into this one setting. So it's a relatively simple lot, about a 3-acre parcel. But I think the floor plan is the thing to pay attention to. Here, this is a couple, so they really only need 1 bedroom, but with flexibility on how to use additional spaces. It's a couple with where the two partners are working from home but working in very different capacities. One doing kind of marketing and design and creative work, but mostly computer based, and the other making miniatures. And I'll give a little shout out to City Folk Studio, who made some Huts miniatures for us. But it really means that there's like toxic stuff going on. There's glues, there's things being sprayed, there's paint, there's all kinds of things. And so how do you create two separate working spaces? One that's really about computer and internet based work, and the other that's about making and needs a certain level of ventilation. And that's a unique consideration for their primary home. That's the kind of thing that they're going to need ongoing forever. It's not the kind of thing everyone needs. So it's also, again, a testament to our standards that we're able to manipulate it from this starting point, which in this case was our medium bar, and turn it into a place that has all of those qualities: a primary suite plus a living, kitchen, dining space with a staircase that goes upstairs to one of the working spaces. In this case, the studio loft, another more public bathroom that can be used by guests, a flexible office space in the back that has a built-in Murphy bed. So when they have their siblings or they have their nephews and nieces or they have friends visit, this rear non-toxic, I'd say, kind of workspace can become a guest bedroom with a dedicated bathroom. And then up the steps, we've got this additional loft space, which has its own ventilation and is really utilized for, and is kind of blocked off from the rest of the building. It's used for workspace and can be kind of reconfigured, but can be kind of cut off with spray booth and material storage and all sorts of things. More unique palette to the client. Again, this is really a reflection of their tastes and how they're going to kind of grow into this property over time. And this place is also under construction. The walls are framed and it's kind of full speed ahead here. So you'll see some updates in the under construction section of our site over the next few weeks as we make more site visits up there. The next is called Reservoir House. This is in near Minnewaska State Park. So kind of Ulster County, Central Catskills, a little further east from the Stonewall House. Our client here purchased a 7-acre lot. With one of them runs a public transport not-for-profit. The other is an attorney, and they were also living in Queens before we worked on this project. And we're going to ditch their offices, get rid of everything, ditch their apartment, and then move here and have sort of a campus for themselves where they would have their live space, which is based on our village standard. But then you see here in the site plan, 2 outbuildings, one which would be sort of a shared office space for the 2 of them, separated, but one building. And then another workspace where they're both getting into more kind of maker hobbies, one woodworking and the other pottery. And so we have a separate outbuilding that's designated for that purpose. And so all of those structures being kind of sprinkled about on the parcel, creating a little bit of a commute. So unlike Stonewall House, where the working space is all inside the same structure, this is really about designing a live-work property where the client really wanted to create some separation. They'd leave their house, rather than hopping on the subway and going a half hour, or hopping in their car and driving a half hour somewhere, they would walk on the trail system on their land and shuffle over to their working accessory unit. And here, this is really the key on this sort of project with live work scenario for us is understanding the zoning conditions, making sure that this sort of use case is legal and feasible, and understanding the master planning, that if you look at this site plan with a number of structures around, you don't want to have it where each one of those has their own transformer and each one of those has their own well and each one of them has their own septic. Will get very expensive or is maybe not feasible or legal at all. So you need to start to think about how are all of these structures going to be serviced by the same infrastructure. And that comes from just good, smart master planning where we know the intent of the project over time and make sure we plan for all of that with the groundwork and all of the infrastructure. So Stonewall House, all of those mixed uses within one building. Live work house or live work home, the property really has these multi-use qualities, and it's really a master planning project. Great. So now we're going to go to the kind of dream house category. Tend to be larger homes. We do defend and push for equity positive after construction value, which again, what I mean by that is that you are spending less on the project than the project is worth day one after construction, that you are immediately equity positive, that the project isn't upside down, that you didn't spend $800,000 to get a house that could trade for $700,000 when you're done. All of these will be equity positive. They may not be at 25% equity positive, which we look for in any investment property, any rental property, any second home. You really do not want to be upside down or anywhere close to that on these. Like I said at the top of the call, each of these, there's no intent to ever leave them. So they're going to appreciate over time, and the equity stored is going to grow with all of that time. And so that's one of the considerations we're bringing to these up front. So the first, called Reservoir House. This is in Smithfield, Rhode Island. You may have been following along a bit on this on social, but this project really started with just a sensational lot. A 10-acre parcel that's surrounded on three sides by a reservoir, where first step was we needed to get a foundation in immediately because the land use was grandfathered in for a very specific amount of time, that the ability to build a residential property on this kind of peninsula had a shelf life. And so at some point, somebody had bought this property back in the day. They had put maybe like a 30-year term where you were able to build a house on it. And when our client purchased it, those 30 years, maybe 29 and 8 months of it had passed. So we needed to get the shape down very quickly. We needed to onboard a team very quickly to be able to get a foundation in and sort of like stop the clock on that. And then we started to design the house from there and what would grow out of that foundation. So that's a little bit of a sidebar, not super relevant to this conversation, but it is important that I bring it up because we meet land parcels and the clients who are looking to do something on them at all different moments, whether they were kind of wacky non-conforming lots or they have these restrictions attached to them, or there's some condition that we need to overcome before we can even get into the house. And this is, I think, a good example of where we're quite successful at navigating that piece of it, and then I think designed and helped develop a really sensational property on top of it. So this is a home that's based on our Big L, but has a 2-car garage, 2 larger bedrooms, but then a full loft space above. So it built into the hillside. I love the approach to this house. You can sort of make it out from the topography here, but you'd be driving in from either from the top side or coming down into the garage. But this top line is probably 10 feet above this garage, which means the back side of the house is really built into the hillside. So from behind, you don't really see that the house is there at all. And then from the front, on the reservoir side, it all opens up. The glass opens up. Everything becomes about taking in the water views on the other side. The pink stuff here, you can make that out a lot more clearly. Here, the house is built into the landscape and really disappears from the rear. So for the most part, nobody will know that it's here. It has great kind of bat cave qualities to it. And here you can see a view from the other side, sort of corner glass views, the reservoir. And here we are under construction. Similarly, this is quite far along. You can see the shape. You can see how it's built in the hillside. See some of the volume and the sensation inside, and how we're taking advantage of the roof peak to create additional spaces. Similarly, our client here will be working from home. They're making a meaningful investment into the office space and basically looked at, what am I going to spend on renting an office over the next 10 years at least? And I'd much rather do that from home. And so rather than just sticking a desk in a corner somewhere, they're making a real home office. And that became a big part of our design brief for ourselves. Again, that rear view with the house built into the hillside. So check out Reservoir House. We'll continue to add imagery on progress, hoping to see this project ready to be documented, final photography towards the tail end of the summer. And we'll also share some of the final numbers on it. While this is, it's a really special house, over $1 million house for sure, but on the land in the area that it is, and the fact that we're either going to get this house in or no one was ever going to be able to build on this, it's going to set the market in the area and will absolutely be very equity positive. And so a large investment, but a very sound investment because it has real ROI attached to it. Churchtown is in Prairieville, New York, up in Columbia County. Really beautiful area. And this also has live work setup. And it's also a larger house, almost a little over 3,000 square feet. It started from our Big L and it's kind of extended and manipulated, and true second floors were added. But I can take you through the floor plan here, kind of enter in to sort of like public mixing chamber in a way that this entry with full walk-in coat closet, gear storage, kids coats, all of those things. You can walk straight through to full length deck on the one side, and you can either go to the right on this side to the public wing, or to the left, or to the private wing, all the bedrooms, or to the left to the more public wing. If you go to the left, come in, you have a pantry, and then first millwork for the kitchen. The kitchen has glass on this side, and then straight through glass on this side. So if you're washing dishes or cooking, you can see the landscape on both sides. It's a very beautiful landscape here as you step through. Dining, living room, and then guest bedroom with its own ensuite, staircase up to the loft above. We'll take a look at that. Really a second floor. And then if you were to enter in and head to the right, you go to the private wing. If kids bedroom number 1, kids bedroom number 2, both with their built-in desks and closets, built-in desk and closet, kids bedroom or kids bathroom, laundry, full laundry room, and then primary suite with walk-in closet and 5-piece bath. And again, great view, kind of perched up from the primary suite over the landscape. And then up in the loft, some really great spaces, almost like a catwalk here that overlooks the double height living and dining space. So that's this here. And at one end, you have a basically kids playroom. And then on the other side, or den, and then on the other side, home office. Also part of this property, some other live work considerations. We saw the more kind of officey office space in the main house. But you also see here number 3 in the site plan, a art studio. Of our clients, one of them is a very established large format oil painter. So you see the orientation of that art studio is oriented towards indirect northern light. And we kind of scripted how that commute would be. How would you walk from the main house, from your bedroom in the morning, have coffee, have breakfast, get the kids out to school, and then make a commute to a new place to get in the mindset of the work of painting for the day, but not so far that you're driving into a different town or you're driving into a separate art studio, but it does feel like you're entering into a transformative, transportive place where the activity is different from what you do at home. So that's really part of the property design. And again, that was a land use question. That was a master planning question. How do we get efficient with our systems? And how do we make sure that we're navigating the local zoning in a way that makes sure that all of this is above board as well? See some of that overall master plan and the real house in progress. This kind of beautiful structure in the field. There's a view from the art studio back towards the main house, and you can see that kind of path that we're creating where you're looking straight into the front door. And here's the art studio. It's a shed roof structure looking north, getting great indirect light throughout the day. So keep up to date here with Churchtown, a really fantastic primary home. And also, I think, again, it's important to mention this is for someone without an infinite budget. That the idea of just going out to on a completely custom building project, starting from a blank page, no idea what the pricing is, just really wasn't an option. And so with Huts, we were able to start with the numbers and the economics of the project right up front, and then start to build on it and say, great, we want to have this art studio. Here's the cost of that decision. How do we want to go about that? Here's the cost of adding this loft space. How do we want to go about that? So trying to find this balance between lots of predictability and de-risking the project overall while not losing the high design and making this a meaningful home that I think is going to be really special when completed. And then the last we'll look at here is, again, also in the Catskills, Western Catskills, based on our village format. And I would say this fits into that category I was describing where the home is everything. It's a resort, it's a vacation spot, it's day-to-day living. It's a hotel for friends and family to stay. It's a workspace, and it has all of these qualities. And so that starts to play into both the space planning, but also the considerations on pricing. So you can see a little bit of the site plan here. This is positioned at the top of a very high site on almost like the top of a mountain. You drive up and come up and around and discover the house. And here, everything's sort of like scaled up a little bit. It's taking our village scheme, which usually has 16-foot widths and is really single story, and scaling it up in every direction. That we're getting into 20 and 24-foot width, so it's sort of aired out a little bit. You've got true second floor in part of it, so we're going up a little bit. Has the same basic form, has the same basic ingredients, has the same kind of design genetics as our standards, but is airier and a little bit more grand, a little bit more luxurious. So here you see a primary suite. Well, we'll kind of enter in the same way. Come in the rear of the house, and one thing I really like here that you can make out a little bit better here. Now you come up the driveway, come into the rear of the house, and really would have no idea what the view is from up there until you get to the back of the house. And then you see through the house. And the glass on either side is sort of framing the view, which is really magnificent up there. And so you're kind of like withholding, and then you get to the top. And then through the house, you see what makes this place so special and why was it worth building this driveway all the way up there. And that's kind of the big payoff from up there. And here you can see that view from the inside. So walking through the floor plan, kind of enter in, have another sort of mixing chamber where there's a decision to make between public and private. Come into sort of connector, head left, and you're going to enter into the public wing of the house. Got our pantry space, kitchen with huge view to the right, lovely forest view to the left, dining space, and then living space, organized around this floating fireplace where glass walls on either side open up entirely and basically can turn this into outdoor space. We go the other direction, enter into primary suite, bedroom, closet, and great 5-piece bath with its own outdoor space, own deck space. It's separated from what's off of the public wing of the house. And then head this way and you head into very efficient kids' rooms, built-in desk, closet, built-in desk and closet, and shared kids bathroom. You can see this is a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath. It's not exorbitant, still quite efficient, or well under 3,000 square feet here, even with the garage space, which is generally far smaller than a custom home developer would create, because there just wouldn't be enough meat on the bone for them to sell it. But when you are taking this on yourself and working with Huts and being your own developer, you can be a little bit more efficient with the space because you're building what you need and all that you need, rather than what you have from a traditional developer, where they're trying to build as much space as they can, as inexpensively as they can, and see how much they can sell that square footage to you for. And that's one of the, there's a larger conversation here, but that's one of the big reasons housing pricing has gotten so out of control, is that houses tend to be too big and developers are incentivized to build as big as possible. Heading up the steps, get into this great flex space, kids play area and guest bedroom, and the garage on the other side. So we've got some flexible workspace. We've got a guest bedroom for visiting grandparents. And we also have this really spectacular pool that overlooks that view. So a lot of the decisions we were making along the way were, what is this going to feel like when our small kids are 20? And we're going to love this house so much. Do we really need to go on spring break somewhere this year to get away if we have this great setup? Or do we need to go away for the summer if we've got this incredible pool arrangement? So that became a big part of our considerations on pricing and what amenities to recommend, including or not include. And this is a pretty special view here. And this project has broken ground. Foundations are going in, and we'll be seeing more updates of this as we go, and seeing this view start to come into, or this vista come into view through the house, which is going to be really, really special. So this went kind of long here. Let me stop there, but we went over some of the unique financing conditions and financing considerations for primary homes, the idea of a renovation addition, kind of hybrid house as a way to control costs and take advantage of the asset that you already have. We went over live work scenarios and projects that fit into that category. And we went over 3 dream houses that are not carte blanche, they're not infinite budget. We're still being quite tight, really, really making sure we're making the right decisions and that we're leading with budget. But I think the end result is really special properties that are going to serve very well for our clients as the place where they live and grow. But I think are also just incredible assets that are going to over time be worth far more than what they put into them initially. So let me stop there. I'll keep it open for a while to anyone who's out there who's got a question. You can just put it in the chat window or there's a little Q&A. Either in Q&A or chat, just drop your question there and I'll do my best to answer it. Leo asks, what materials do you build off site? Well, it depends. Some things, it really depends on the project, when we panelize or prefab any elements and where the project is. So there are locations where either they're hard to access and we don't want to be running cords of wood back and forth or like small shipments of lumber back and forth. And we want to panelize stuff off site and then bring most of the shell of the house all at once. Think like islands where we're getting there on ferries or tough to reach sites where we'll kind of want to make one drop off and that's it. So in those cases, we'll panelize big chunks of the building. That tends to be what we're doing. Smaller structures, like not really forever homes, think about ADUs. They can be more modular, which means that it's not chunks of the building. It's actually like finished pieces, finished bathrooms, finished structures that are going on the back of flatbeds and really being dropped down as a completed piece. But that's really more in the kind of like ADU, smaller footprint element. Here, we would panelize where it makes sense. Otherwise, it would be largely site built. Brett is raising his hand. Do you have a question? Okay. How long would it take to fully complete this project? If we're looking at the one that we're looking at here, the client came with the land, so we didn't go through a land sourcing exercise, which can be quite variable. But this, like most of our projects, we tend to get to permits, which means we're entitled to be able to build the house within 14 to 16 weeks, which is quite swift. So we're going from a raw piece of land into an entitled piece of land within 3 to 4 months. And the ideal is that you've got your build plans together, you have the build team together that we help organize, and you have your financing together all at once. And if you're in the right part of the country, it's like spring and the ground's not frozen. In this case, we had the project permitted in the beginning of the winter. It was a particularly rough winter in this area of the world. We couldn't start foundations until the spring. And so that's why you see in the very beginning of April, we started excavating for foundations. This will be about a 9-month build timeline from there. So we broke ground in April. So 9 months from there, we're going to be looking at around tail end of January 2026 if the house is done. Let's see. Brett asks, in your opinion, what area upstate is priced within a $500,000 budget to build the area? You mentioned earlier Westchester area is very expensive. What areas somewhat near Albany are easier to build in price-wise? Thanks so much for the webinar and good info. Well, thank you so much, Brett. Yeah, lots of areas. I mean, first of all, upstate means lots of things, big swath of the world. Now, you could say Westchester to a New Yorker's point of view is upstate, but generally where we're talking about is Catskills, Hudson Valley, which spans from the Delaware River in the west to the Connecticut and Massachusetts border on the east and upwards of 3 hours beyond George Washington Bridge. So that really means Sullivan County, Ulster County, Dutchess County, Columbia County, Greene County, and Delaware County. And we are building projects in the $500,000 range in all of them. I'd say the only of those that it gets a little bit tough to do like a true like 3-bedroom, 2-bath house to get within that kind of build cost range is going to be in Dutchess County. Pretty expensive there. The economics look kind of like the Hamptons or somewhere. So it tends to be a little bit tough, but we have smaller projects in that range in each of those counties. And we looked at a couple of them, like the Stonewall House is in that build range. And that's essentially a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. It just happens to be that 2 of the bedrooms are being used as working spaces or studio spaces. So all over the place. And Brett, if you're thinking about working on a project upstate, we help lots of people source land in the right areas to make sure that we're leading with budget and then designing to it rather than designing something and hoping the budget all works out, which it generally never does. So when we can talk to somebody early, we can help guide a lot of that and make sure that we hit your marks. Leo asks, I read on the website, some people pick their own interior materials, i.e. cabinets. How do you advise clients on this? Also curious about needing or not needing basements in cold climate. Okay, so our clients almost always come with a design intent in mind. We're very lucky that we have thoughtful clients that have kind of come to us by looking at lots of approaches for how to get a house, and they've determined that we're the best one for them. And that usually means there's some design thinking as well. And so what we do on the interior side, we're often doing the procurement for interiors. If you think about a new construction house, there's probably something like 300 or 400 things that need to be specified and sourced for a new house. And we like to support that effort and streamline it. And we do that by asking really big blocky questions. Is this more like a light and airy space, more of a dark and rich space? Do you have little kids that are going to impact our thoughts on durability? Or you're going to rent it? Again, thoughts on durability and turnover. What's your time frame for move-in, which is going to impact some of the things we would specify for lead times, etc. And we make, based on those responses, we make that first set of selections of those 300 or 400 things. And usually people say, I love 90% of this, but I've got a very particular idea on cabinet finish or cabinet pulls, or I have this light fixture I've been carrying around, sort of investment grade, and I want to make sure that gets incorporated. And usually folks will say, I really have 6 or 8 things within this that I really care about. And so we can have a meaningful conversation about 6 or 8 things rather than a superficial conversation about hundreds of things. And then we help with the procurement, that we pass through our trade discounts to our clients. If we don't have a trade discount with one of their suppliers, we'll make one. And then we manage the delivery and storage and making sure all the right things get to site at the right time. Sometimes folks will say hey, I've got a cabinet guy and I want to use them. Cool. No problem. That can be very a la carte, and we can make sure that their work gets incorporated into the construction documents and is well coordinated. So we're quite flexible there, but we're designed to help streamline a lot of those 300 or 400 decisions. You also asked about basements. Yeah, not a requirement. You can either do kind of super insulated slab on grade. We do a lot of crawl spaces. 48-inch crawl spaces, having both an air gap for ventilation and for insulation. And it allows us to run a lot of our chases and mechanicals under the floorboard, so you don't have kind of funky bump outs and soffits and things that kind of trash the cleanliness of the walls, and so we have all of our registers coming in from below. And we also do full basements, and a lot of our projects, that's either an additional space that we think about, or the landscape is really set up for it. If we're building on a slope, we say, hey, you're already going to have to excavate down here 8 feet. We might as well make this habitable. Let's just make a basement. And the cost differences are, if you're leaving it unfinished to begin with, the concrete cost and the excavation cost difference is pretty nominal. So might as well go ahead and do it. And if you want to finish it later, you can do that. Yeah. Leo asks, curious how coordinating with local trades affects price. For context, I'm looking for my parents building in central New York. Yeah, it can a lot. I think that what we're excellent at is really knowing our material costs, our commodities pricing, the specifications of everything that's in our projects. Our standards help take care of that, where right up front, region by region, based on the square footage of the project, before putting any pen to paper, we're probably going to know within 10% what the house is going to cost. That said, labor cost changes drastically. So when we got a couple of projects in Central California right now, in the Bay Area, really expensive labor costs, all kinds of regulations around what kind of insurances everyone needs, and it's just very expensive for labor, and that plays into the pricing. Doesn't necessarily change the material costing that cost that much, but does impact some of the labor costs. And also have projects in Kentucky and Tennessee where we find cost of construction on the labor side to be very, very reasonable. And so it impacts it quite a bit. I would guess that Syracuse area labor costs are going to be about 75% of what we see in Western Catskills area, which would yield a build cost of call it around $300 a square foot ish in that area, maybe a little above that, but certainly less than we see in the Hudson Valley. We're always looking at that too. I mean, we're of course up on like material trends and commodities pricing and all the tariff stuff and all of that. But even more important than that is that we have real projects in real parts of the world, which gives us actual data on what's happening right now in that location. There's the things that we can control. What are we specifying? And then there's things that we can't control as much, which is all the kind of like macroeconomic conditions of the folks that live there and how that translates into labor costs. But instead of just speculating on it, we probably worked nearby there. And so can do what I just did, sort of like extrapolate. Here's probably where that's going to land and how that's going to impact build pricing. Okay, cool. Yeah, Leo, if you want to chat about the project or anyone else wants to chat about a project or anything else, you can always write me directly at wayne@huts.com. You can go to huts.com and fill out our get started form, and we can gather some information, make sure that your project idea is a fit. And this, like all of our webinars, will be cut up and edited somewhat and put on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/HutsNYC. And you can check out or share this how we do it or any other how we do it in our YouTube library. And yeah, excited to hear from some of you, see what you have in mind, and thank you so much for joining.